He saved a dying native beauty. Refusing marriage would mean war with her tribe. Introduction. When fate, honor, and cultures collide, stories of frontier encounters between newcomers and native peoples are often tinged with drama, romance, and peril. Among the most fascinating of these is the legendary tale of a lone explorer who saves the life of a native woman, a deed that, far from ending with gratitude, draws him into a web of love, obligation, and the threat of all-out war. This narrative, repeated in folklore, adventure tales, and occasionally in the annals of history, speaks to the deep human themes of sacrifice, belonging, and the high stakes of crossing cultural boundaries. But how did such tales take root? What do they say about the societies that told them? And where does legend end and history begin? Let's take a journey through myth, anthropology, and real-life encounters to explore why, in some cultures, saving a life could mean gaining a bride or making a powerful enemy. Chapter 1. The birth of a legend. The motif in folklore. The scenario. An outsider rescues a native woman, is offered her hand in marriage, and faces dire consequences if he refuses, appears in numerous cultures across the world. In North America, it became a staple of frontier literature, and later, Hollywood westerns. The story is so enduring because it encapsulates multiple universal themes: heroism and sacrifice. The act of saving another's life is the ultimate demonstration of courage and compassion. Hospitality and reciprocity. In many societies, such acts create powerful obligations of gratitude and alliance. Cultural collision. The outsider is suddenly thrust into the center of a foreign society's traditions and expectations. Why refusal meant war. In tight-knit and honor-based societies, hospitality and reciprocity are not casual customs. They are binding social contracts. Accepting help or honor often requires a reciprocal gesture. To refuse such a bond, especially one as sacred as marriage, could be seen as a grave insult to the woman, her family, and the entire community. Chapter 2. The anthropology of alliance. The role of marriage in tribal societies. In many indigenous cultures, marriage is more than a union between two individuals. It's a strategic alliance between families, clans, or even nations. When an outsider saves a community member, the group may view him as a hero and potential ally. Marriage is treaty. By marrying into the tribe, the outsider becomes kin, forging a lasting bond of peace and cooperation. Protection and loyalty. The tribe ensures the safety of their daughter and expects the same in return. The social contract. Anthropologists call this the law of hospitality. Accepting a tribe's daughter is accepting the tribe itself. Refusing, on the other hand, is a rejection of their trust and goodwill, which could trigger a cycle of vengeance or even war. Chapter 3. Tales from the Frontier. The American West. The motif found fertile ground in tales from the American frontier. Trappers, scouts, and mountain men frequently wrote memoirs filled with accounts, sometimes true, sometimes embellished, of their adventures among Native American tribes. The Mountain Man and the Chief's Daughter. One recurring tale tells of a trapper who stumbles upon a wounded native woman. He risks his own life to nurse her back to health, only to find himself honored by her family and offered her hand in marriage. Hesitant, the man considers cultural differences and his own desires, but his refusal is met with shock, sometimes even threats of violence. The tragedy of cultural misunderstanding. Many of these stories end in tragedy, not because of malice, but because of cultural misunderstanding. To a white settler, marriage was a personal choice. To the tribe, it was a sacred bond, and refusal could only be interpreted as a grave insult. The Pocahontas myth. Perhaps the most famous and controversial example is the legend of John Smith and Pocahontas. While the real historical facts are debated, the myth endures. A native woman, a foreign man, a dramatic rescue, and the expectation of alliance, if not outright marriage. Chapter 4. The reality behind the romance. True stories or tall tales. While these stories are dramatic, historians caution that many are exaggerated or entirely fictional. Yet, they reveal important truths about the expectations and pressures of cross-cultural encounters. Real alliances. There are documented cases of intermarriage being used to cement political alliances. French and British traders in Canada and the Great Lakes region often married Indigenous women, gaining not only family, but trading partners and guides. In these cases, marriage was a strategic act, not just a romantic one. Consequences of refusal. Refusal did not always mean immediate war, but it could lead to strained relations, loss of trade, or even violence if the snub was seen as particularly egregious. The threat of war in these stories points to the seriousness with which such bonds were regarded. Chapter 5. The Woman's Perspective. Agency and expectations. It's important to remember that Native women in these stories were not always passive participants. In many tribes, women had a say in whom they married, and their desires could influence the outcome. Honor and shame. However, being refused after a public offer could bring shame not only on the woman but on her entire family. In societies where honor was paramount, this could have far-reaching consequences, including demands for redress or retribution. Chapter 6. Legends in Literature and Film. The Hollywood Treatment. The motif became a staple of early Western films and novels, sometimes romanticized, sometimes sensationalized. Movies such as The Searchers and Broken Arrow played with the idea of cross-cultural marriages and the tensions they created. Changing perspectives. Modern storytellers have begun to challenge and reinterpret these narratives, focusing on the agency of Indigenous women and the complexities of cultural exchange. Chapter 7. Lessons from the Past. The Power of Hospitality. These stories, whether fact, fiction, or a mix of both, reflect the power and peril of hospitality. They remind us that kindness can create bonds as strong as blood, but that misunderstanding those bonds can lead to conflict. The importance of cultural respect. If there's a lesson to be learned, it's that cross-cultural encounters demand empathy, humility, and respect. The tragedies in these tales often stem from a failure to understand the values and expectations of another society. Chapter 8. Real-life case studies. The fur trade marriages. In the 18th and 19th centuries, French trappers and British traders frequently married into native communities. These unions were not just romantic, they cemented trading rights, peace, and mutual protection. Refusing such an offer could mean the loss of business or even personal danger. Lewis and Clark's expedition. Sacagawea, the Shoshone woman who guided the Lewis and Clark expedition, is another example of how marriage and kinship ties could shape the fate of newcomers. Her marriage to Toussaint Charbonneau, a French-Canadian, was critical in establishing trust between the explorers and native tribes. Métis identity. The children of these unions, known as the Métis in Canada, became a distinct cultural group, embodying the blending of European and Indigenous worlds. The alliances forged through marriage had lasting social and political impact. Chapter 9. Reflections and Modern Echoes. Romance or power play. While these tales are often romanticized, they also raise questions about power, consent, and cultural difference. Was the outsider truly free to refuse? Did the native woman have agency in the arrangement? These are questions that historians and writers continue to debate. The enduring power of story. Why do these stories persist? Because they dramatize the universal challenges of crossing boundaries, between cultures, between individuals, between expectations and desires. Chapter 10. Conclusion. Bridging worlds, then and now. The story of a man who saves a dying native beauty and faces war if he refuses her hand is more than just an adventure. It is a window into the complexities of hospitality, honor, and cultural collision. Whether told around a campfire, written in a journal, or projected on a screen, these tales remind us that the choices we make in moments of crisis can ripple outward, binding us to others in ways we never expected. In a world still wrestling with questions of identity, inclusion, and understanding, these stories challenge us to look beneath the surface, to find the human truths that connect us all. Epilogue. Have we really changed? Today, we may not face the same literal consequences for our actions, but the need to understand and respect other cultures is as urgent as ever. The courage to cross boundaries, the humility to listen, and the wisdom to honor our commitments. These are the lessons that echo down through the ages.